Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Getting Sketchy, where either myself or my good friend and fellow artist and art teacher, Ashley Hurst, tries to create a drawing for you folks live here on YouTube within a time frame, and it's usually 45 minutes, and tonight it's going to be 45 minutes again. And we'll get to that photo reference in just a minute, what Ashley's going to be working from tonight, because Ashley is the one doing the drawing tonight. And Ashley, are you ready over there?
Just barely, Matt. Thanks for asking. This is Getting Sketchy, where we move pretty fast. I was a little late getting here tonight, so I've been moving fast for about the last 20 minutes, which is probably good. I'm in the right frame of mind to sketch.
Yeah, I hate that feeling when you're trying to rush, you're moving quickly, and then it's time to slow down, and then there's just a little bit of drag that happens there with your mind and body that just continues over.
I'm out of phase a little bit.
So take a deep breath, if I can get my throat cleared out. Take a deep breath, get ready to go. And for those of you who are going to be drawing alongside or just watching, we're going to be working with just regular graphite pencils tonight on drawing paper. And is it just regular drawing paper?
Yeah, it is. It's a soft white, so it's not a pure bright white. It's a little bit soft, and I'm not going to use any other white materials to brighten it up. So any sketch or drawing paper, if you'd like to follow along, I hope you want to follow along, will do.
And if you are watching this live, of course, there is a chat box here on YouTube. You can, of course, post comments and questions, and they don't have to be about what we're doing tonight. They can be anything art related. And myself or Ashley will do our best to answer those questions for you. If you do put your question or comment in all capital letters, that's going to help me see it amongst all the other comments, since I'm going to be manning the chat box tonight. Because sometimes the chat box gets rolling pretty quickly. And just hello to everyone from Ontario, Dallas, Texas, Lake Erie, Old Town, Virginia, Italy, London, UK. You guys are from Germany. The Mojave Desert, I bet it's hot and dry there.
For those of you
Indiana.
that are watching in the middle of the night, thank you for waking up. That is dedication, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, there's people from all different time zones all across the world. So thank you guys for being here. That really means a lot to the both of us. So welcome, everybody. If you don't know, Getting Sketchy is a show that we do here on YouTube, but it's all part of our website over at thevirtualinstructor.com. And we do have a variety of different courses and all kinds of things for you to explore if you want to go a little bit deeper with your art instruction. There are a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of different subjects. We do weekly live lessons, which are different from the live stream that we're doing here on YouTube. The weekly live lessons are more in depth. We take it really slow and create finished artworks, where here on Getting Sketchy, they're a little bit quicker. The program also includes weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute and a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. If you want to check out our program, you can. Everyone starts out with a week-long trial for free. There's a link in the description below this video. And there's also a link in the description below this video to check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free as well. But hold off on that because we're getting ready to get drawing here. Are you about ready to go over there?
I think I'm ready. I've been studying my composition a little bit. I want to talk about it a little bit before we start. So we'll take a look at it before we start the timer.
And one last thing, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoy this kind of stuff, let us know by hitting the like button. So we're going to go ahead and transition over so you can go ahead and get ready to go there. All right, it's all yours.
All right, there it is. Unplugged. The subject revealed. So I can hear Kurt Cobain playing music in my head right now, but this has nothing to do with guitars. It's just...
That's a whole nother problem.
That's a whole... Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. So yeah, this is... these are a couple of... Actually, it's the 2 ends of the same chord. But what attracted me to it isn't that it's, the plugs, but rather the forms that these plugs are made from. They're sort of geometric. They've been rounded off a little bit to give them a softer, organic feel. I'm kind of a fan of industrial design. I like to enjoy and appreciate the artwork of those unnamed persons that draw these types of objects so that they can be produced for us to use. So I was kind of attracted to the shapes and forms, regardless of what this subject actually is, them being plugs. Also, I'm a big fan of the artwork of Klaus Oldenburg, as I know Matt is as well, a sculptor who tried to show the ordinary in an extraordinary way. And the way he would do that is often to sculpt basically small objects large. So I know you can't really tell maybe from the photograph, but these are photographed much larger than they are in real life. So the drawing will be a little bit bigger than the actual objects. And then two, I photograph these from a low angle, which is a different way than we're used to looking at plugs, because they're usually down on the floor, and we're quite a bit above that. So in any case, that's why I chose this subject. Now the composition, I just want to talk a minute about that. If you take a look at the reference, pretty much all of the positive space, the things that are touchable, the plugs themselves, are here in this triangle. And most of the empty space or negative space is up here in this triangle. And so this is a type of composition that I really appreciate, the balancing of positive and negative space as opposed to the balancing of imagery within the space. So in a lot of ways, I think of this type of composition in a rectangle, sort of like a yin-yang, the circular design that's black with a little white in one half and white with a little black in the other half. So in this rectangle is mostly positive space with just a little bit of emptiness. And in this rectangle is mostly empty space with just a little bit of object of positive space. And in that way, I feel like it creates a type of balance, not like approximate symmetry, but a type of balance nonetheless. So anyway, I think I'm about ready to get started, Matt. We can probably bring up the timer now.
Are you ready for the timer? And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer as you start laying things out.
Okay.
So there we go, 45 minutes. I just want to talk, kind of expand a little bit more on the positive and negative space.
Sure.
Because when I do the weekly critiques and I talk about composition, I find myself talking about the balance between positive and negative space. And I think that a lot of people wonder if you have to have a certain amount of positive space and negative space, or if you should have mostly positive space, or if you should have mostly negative space, or an equal balance between the two. And it's really different for every subject that you do. Some subjects are visually heavy. And when you have an object that's visually heavy or a subject that's visually heavy,
like an object that has pattern or texture that could make it heavy.
Right. Or strong contrast and value, or comes close to the edge of the picture plane. All of those things create visual heaviness. And the more visual heaviness you have in one location, you need to balance that out. It's somewhat like a teeter-totter or a seesaw. I used to call it a seesaw, but I've now called it a teeter-totter because more people know what that is than a seesaw. But if you have a certain amount of things on one side of the seesaw, you've got to balance it out with a certain amount of things on the other side of the seesaw, right? And the same thing's true for an image when you're trying to balance it visually. So in this particular composition, it's very heavy at the bottom, as you pointed out.
Right.
So that's why there needs to be more negative space at the top in order to make sure that it's visually balanced.
Oh, that's an excellent analysis. Okay, so I'm just trying to find some important angles. This obviously is too skinny for the plug. I'm just really looking for sort of parallel relationships through the middle of this. I guess this is the female end. I'm trying to look for a parallel relationships that'll help me with those empty spaces, those holes eventually.
So you're starting things out with just an HB pencil.
That's right, just a regular HB pencil. And we'll be switching to a General's layout pencil, which is a type of ebony pencil.
Yeah, General's layout pencil, for those of you who aren't familiar, is about equivalent to a 4B pencil. So it's pretty dark, but it's a little bit harder, actually, so it keeps a sharper tip for a longer period of time, but it does have the ability to make those nice dark marks. So at this point in the drawing, you're basically just mapping things out, right?
Yeah, I'm moving pretty slow, and the marks that I'm putting down, I expect they'll probably all move around some. And as you've already observed, many of them have.
I see that you started out with kind of a rectangular shape on the bottom
here?
plug. No, on the bottom plug there, that rectangular shape in the middle. And that was just basically to get an idea of that, where those
holes are going to be, actually.
Exactly.
Or really, I'm trying to capture their angles.
And then
not
you
really
use
draw
that.
the holes so much as think about those angles and then use that to build out, because the edges of this this side of the plug are parallel to those rectangular holes. So there's a lot of parallel relationships or nearly parallel relationships here that we're going to need to discover together.
Well, I think that's really an important thing to point out here, because most of the time we try to start with the outer contours and work our way in, or at least the outer forms and work our way in. But you recognize that the actual openings within the plug are very important to get correct. So you kind of started with that, and now you're working on the outer contours.
Yeah, the outer contours are more challenging because they're rounded, you know. Mm-hmm. So these rectangular parts that aren't actually sketched in, though, they're more stable. You know, they're really parallelograms. Is what we're looking at right now, which is, as I say, a lot easier of a shape to draw than this wacky thing right here.
Okay, just catching up here with the comments. Peggy B says, "What is the next live class and when?" Right now, we are working with colored pencils. We're doing a peony flower, and we're going into part 8 tonight. The live lesson is broadcast at thevirtualinstructor.com. It's part of the membership program right after this. So we start broadcasting at 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And let's see. Brent Does Art says, "Hello, guys. Best part of my YouTube week."
All right.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Brent. Glad to hear Matt repeat your voice again, I guess. Okay, I don't want to work too much on one plug because I'm going to need one to help me with the other. Not so certain about my proportion yet. This may be just a bit long. I think I'll go with that.
And you're judging the length of that cord basically based on the positioning of the top?
Sort of. I mean, I want to start to think now about how the back end of this one's going to relate to this plug up here. So holding my pencil up at my reference, what I'm really doing is laying it up against this edge to see how it passes through the end that is above it.
So you started somewhere.
I feel pretty good about that, actually.
You started somewhere, and then from then on, it's basically just a series of making comparisons.
Right, I believe so. You know, you have to get something down, right or wrong, and work with it for a while. And then as soon as you feel like it's close, then you use that to start build out.
So would you suggest people who are just learning the draw or still developing their skills, which we're all developing our skills, sure, I guess I should say, but people who are brand new and they're not really sure where to start, with a subject like this, do you feel like you can really start anywhere just as long as you're confident that you can get some accuracy in place?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Question. I mean, if you're drawing a portrait, I guess you don't, there's places you don't want to start, but with an object like this, and mostly geometric objects, I think so. And I want to bounce back and forth. I want it to all sort of develop together. While I'm working on this object, I'll actually be kind of looking at this one some, and vice versa. So
gotcha.
We got to just remember that these two parts they don't exist in their own little vacuum. They're part of the same shape, honestly, because the way they overlap one another.
Okay, Sarah says, "Did both of you have university training, or are you both self-taught?" And we both did go to art schools.
That's true.
We are formally taught, but I'm not sure if the term self-taught, and I know the term self-taught is used quite a bit, but I'm not sure if I totally agree with anyone being self-taught, because you do learn. None of us learn in isolation. You're influenced by other things.
Even just by what you look at.
Right. Even anything might be an influence on how you develop as an artist. So I think that the better way is to say, I haven't had any formal training as an artist. Because, that applies to anything. None of us are really self-taught at anything.
Standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did go to a university for art, but I feel like a lot of my education happened in the library between classes, just looking at all of the artwork that had been made through history.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way. Mine wasn't in the library though, but I don't even know what the inside of the library at my school looked like. But I shouldn't say that. But, I'd learned some stuff from my professors, but I feel like I learned more through experience and my own self-research. But I think that's part of going to college anyway.
I don't think that, and I remember some of my best professors saying this. You know, they said the artwork you're going to make when you leave here is nothing like what you're making right now, because you're being sort of directed by my ideas of what is good and right in a drawing. And once you have time away from your teachers, you know, you're going to start to change and develop your own personal sense of aesthetics, and that is so true. So going to school for art is really just a place to start. You don't want to stay there. You want to take what you've learned and then continue to add to that, whether you're learning from YouTube like I learn nowadays, including about art and many other things, or otherwise like at a university.
Now, I noticed that just above where you're working right now, you have some lines in place, and those are lines of contrast. So you're seeing contrast and value, and you're just making.
You mean like
note.
right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that you're right.
Yep.
I should have mentioned that. I've drawn a shadows line, a shadows edge right there. And actually, one thing I really like about this plug is this little dark channel that I get on this corner. So I might want to put those two lines in there that show me where this dark shadow, this shadow's core, is going to be strongest on this plug. Just as a note for when we get to shading.
Now, did you take this photo, or did it?
I took it.
Okay, yeah, I figured you did.
This is an original. You can't find photos like this on the on the internet. It's not interesting
like an
enough.
Ashley Hurst photo. It's cool. It's really cool.
Well, you know, it's not about the subject. It's about the arrangement. You know, I wanted this top plug coming out at us a little bit so that these parts that are ordinarily parallel slightly flare. And we can see this side of the plug is flaring towards the left, and this is flaring towards the right.
You got some perspective.
A little
and
bit of foreshortening. Yeah, we're looking up at the subject, just trying to make this this very common object as interesting as possible.
Now, I'm sure there's someone out there who could find some meaning in this.
I've been trying to think of some.
You have the plug,
right?
you know?
Something that one of my art history professors would have said, because they were great at reading into artwork things that weren't actually there. No offense to art history professors out there.
Society.
I do that. I do that myself. Right. So we've got these two parts that, you know, echo a relationship, but they're pointed away from each other. I don't know. Make of it what
really
you
cool.
will.
It's a great composition.
Make of it what you will.
It'd be really cool as a large painting too. Okay.
Well, if
Keeping
this
it
drawing
black
goes
and white,
well,
you know,
then maybe that'll happen. Okay, now let's see. I'm going to start these two prongs together since they're similar.
Now, I'll also point out here that you did not start this drawing by just doing the outlines, which are referred to as contour lines. You started building things.
Yeah.
You're basically constructing.
Right. I tried to start with something for this one at least that was sort of like a square or a parallelogram, and then sort of carve out of it. A lot like a sculptor. I like to think of drawings as sort of like flat sculptures, and you can put down more form than you need, and then start whittling and shaving it down. Just like when Matt was working with charcoal, you know, you can put down more material than you need, and then use your eraser to sort of whittle and shave it down. So I'm a big believer in getting plenty of stuff out there and then working with it.
I have an old article on the blog that is called "Think Like a Sculptor to Improve Your Drawing."
Oh,
same kind of.
I'm going to have to read that now.
It's really old, really old, like maybe 2010, 2011.
Oh, yeah. One of the early ones.
Yeah.
Okay. You can see I kind of boxed this out. You know, there's some implied lines happening here, and I just want to make sure that the height of one of these prongs and the other prong, they feel about right. So I'm thinking about if they were connected, you know, what kind of angle would they be connected by? And I think I'm just a little bit steep. So I'm going to bring that down.
That's kind of helping
tad.
to keep your perspective.
That's right.
Correct.
Just kind of following it all the way around.
Because theoretically, there's a vanishing point somewhere back there.
Sure. I think it's off the. I think it might be.
It's got to be
just
off the
maybe
page.
below. Just and it's interesting you say that, Matt, because when we were studying perspective in school, usually the vanishing points are on our paper or pretty close to it, just because that's our workspace. But artwork is a little more realistic when you get those vanishing points, or at least one of them, outside of your picture plane.
Yeah, that's most of the time.
Yeah, you don't end up with these crazy distortions near the edges. So my advice is to, if you're going to have vanishing points in a drawing you're making up from your imagination, get them outside of your picture plane, maybe even way outside, and use a yardstick instead of a ruler. I know that's not what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
But it's just something that I like to do.
And a yardstick is also referred to as a meter stick for all of you guys.
Yeah, that's
not
right.
in the United States.
Meter sticks are about 4¼ inches longer, or something
Yes,
like
they
that.
are. They are longer than a yardstick, or shorter, but they're not the same as a yardstick.
Now, you golfers out there, you all know what yards are, no matter where you live. I'm sure.
That's true. That is true, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
All right, and I want to just pause for a minute. I've been moving a lot. I need to just pause and kind of look at this for just a sec. So the gap here is a little bit bigger on my drawing than it is in the photograph. You guys probably all noticed that. So you're probably screaming at the screen right now, negative space. Oh, I'm gonna shrink that down a little bit. I'm gonna shrink that down by making this prong just a little bit larger, and I think that's probably okay to do.
Yeah, I think that prong is larger.
Yeah.
I think you're right about
So,
that.
usually when you see a discrepancy, sometimes you have to move two things. But in this case, I think I'm good. I'm going to get away with just one, and it's going to be close enough. Close enough.
And you probably could get away with it anyway.
Probably. No one's going to look at our reference. It's always important
Except
to remember
all
that.
of the
except
people
all of you
watching
guys
the
out there.
stream here
All right.
from all over the world.
No one else. No one but you guys. Close friends.
So I want you guys to just pay attention to how much time Ashley is using, or Ashley is taking, to basically just plan out where the contour lines are. I think sometimes, especially if you're new to drawing, we can't wait to get to that shading part where we're adding the values. And we kind of skip over this important initial step of the process of ensuring accuracy as we lay out the lines.
I sure
through
don't want to
construction.
spend 20 minutes shading and then see a problem
Right.
that drives me crazy.
Right.
And I'm there's always going to be differences, but it's worth taking that little, even though there's a timer, it's still worth taking a minute just to put the pencil down and look.
And when Ashley does do the shading and develop the value, it's amazing how quickly you can do this, adding the shading. Of course, there's a broad range of how far you can develop the value. So you can get value down quickly, or you can work very, very tediously slow.
Sure. It's something to do with style, I guess.
Yeah. But either way, this part of the drawing process can't be overlooked and doesn't need to be rushed, even though we have a timer on the screen.
Yeah, Matt and I always intend to work up at least somewhat the shading or texture that you see in our artwork. But I'll be honest, I love looking at old, classic sketchbooks of the old masters and just looking at their line drawings.
Okay, Pandora Law asks, how much does rubbing out compromise the drawing from upsetting the tooth of the paper? I think that what is being asked is how much does erasing mess up the tooth of the paper? I'm just putting it in street terms here.
Let's see. I would say in this case, probably not enough to matter. At least not for how far we're going to take this drawing and with the material that we're using.
Yeah, and it's different for every surface. There's some surfaces that I've worked on that I'm a little bit skittish about doing a lot of erasing, because if you go back with the pencil, you'll still be able to maybe apply graphite, but it has a little bit of a different texture, or maybe there's an inconsistency there.
That's a great question, though. I have
it is a
had
good
drawings that were challenging, and I had a lot of erasing to do. And then what I'll do after that is make a nice, clean transfer with finely fleshed out drawing to a fresh sheet of paper, and then move on to whatever media, whether it's graphite
Now,
or colored pencil.
when you
to
say
finish.
transfer, you mean a tracing.
I do. I mean a tracing.
Dun, dun, dun.
I do. I mean a tracing. I hope you guys have all seen the recent Matt's recent video on tracing. It's very informative. And when I do that, I usually use trace my own drawings. I usually, if they're small like this, use a light box, a little LED light. It's really more like a light tablet, but I still call it light box because they used to be shaped like they were kind of chunky in the old days. Now the LED lights make them nice and thin. You can put them inside of a folder. And if the drawing's really large, I usually just use a window. All right, see, we've got 26 minutes left. I'm gonna just go ahead and throw in a few of these arcs back here. Got a lot of flexibility with the chords, no pun intended, because they can go anywhere you want them to. They move around. A lot of flexibility. Okay.
What a great subject for getting sketchy.
You think so?
I think so.
I
think you were very wise about this.
Well, I will say I did think about it for a week. What am I going to draw? And I thought about this and just kept mulling it over for a few days, and then decided to try to take some photographs, and it worked out pretty well.
Perfect.
I want to try to pick objects or things that'll be pretty instructive. I think in this season. Last season, I really challenged myself and tried to pick some things that I thought were difficult to do in 45 minutes. But this season, I want to focus on hopefully some artwork that's different and challenging in a kind of a different way, a way in which we can learn from.
Well, this is great for a few reasons. First of all, it's a great composition, and it's a good opportunity to talk about the composition. But also,
composition makes or break art,
doesn't
it? And you can have an only okay drawing, and if the composition's good, it's a good picture.
Mm-hmm. And also, we don't sit around every day and sketch plugs, or most of us don't. So it forces you to look at an object closely, an object that we probably assume that we already know.
Right. Thank you, Klaus Oldenburg.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Klaus Oldenburg's sculpture of a paperclip. It's in New Orleans. It's blue. It's about 30 feet tall. Just a paperclip, What possessed him to spend, months and months working on a paperclip? All right. I think we're pretty close. Got a couple of little ellipses up here to draw. And these guys can be challenging. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to draw the parallelogram you need and then aim at the center points of each of those sides. Just knock off the corners and that'll give you a distorted circle that's closer to the ellipse maybe you're trying to capture. Mine was too small.
Henrique asked, do you recommend some site to get photos like this? And there are photo sharing sites out there, like Pixabay is probably my favorite.
So we use that a lot. I use that a lot.
But this photo, Ashley took this photo, and everybody has smartphones these days. This is a great example of just snapping a photo of something that's an everyday object.
I almost took a photograph of myself taking the photograph, so you can see how ridiculous and precarious all this was.
I would have loved to see video of you taking a photo of yourself taking the photo of the object.
You should. I moved these little plugs around for like 30 minutes, and I would move one. And take a picture, and then move one, and then they would all fall on the ground, and I'd start over.
So I was going to say, I'm going to safely assume that this isn't the only photo you took either.
No, that's true.
Is it.
I have a lot of photos almost just like this one, and from slightly different angles or with different lighting. I had my own light source, and I moved it up and down and farther back and farther out just to watch the the values on these objects change. I wanted to make sure I had light, right, medium here, right, and or sort of. So I guess this is sort of light, medium, and then dark. I was just trying to get a whole value scale in here as close as I could to it. So I tell you what, and I'll be honest, some of the other photographs that we've done that did come from Pixabay, I spent more time looking for those photographs than it took me to create this one all on my own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you have to edit them too. Or
yeah, that's right.
Edit the images. What was I going to say here? The only thing is, I doubt many people are going to be searching YouTube for how to draw a plug.
That's true. Sorry about that.
This is way more. This is way more value. This will be
it's not exactly clickbait, but you guys don't want clickbait, do you? We're all tired of clickbait. So
yeah.
Except for that tracing video that you did, that was a great one.
But that wasn't clickbait.
It's not clickbait.
None of my descriptions are clickbait.
That's true.
That's.
It's just it was a controversial topic in our field, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
That's all.
No, but this will be a valuable gem that people will find here. And those of you watching this live, you're
in the course of the next year or so, there's going to be about 3 people that need to draw a plug, and they're going to look us up and they're going to think this was made just for them.
All 3 of those people are going to see this video.
Oh, okay. I think it's time to shade. We've got about 20 minutes left. And I actually erased this little edge out earlier and didn't talk about it. If you look at the reference, there's a white edge here, not a dark edge. And I want to make sure that happens. Sometimes corners catch the light. And sometimes we accidentally leave our dark contour lines in there where there's actually a light edge. And so besides these unusual forms, I did want to try to moved my light around until this corner, or at least a corner, this one to a lesser degree, caught a little bit of light. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we always get wrapped up in drawing those contour lines and forget that contour lines
don't exist.
Aren't really lines.
That's right.
They're just areas of contrast that we notice. And
you might even say that this is an abstract drawing because it's been changed from forms to lines. Now, I know that flies in the face of what abstraction is, but it has been changed in some way, at least for now. Now we're going to try to put it back.
But then everything is abstraction.
And this is kind of where I'm at right now in my own...
In your own artistic philosophy.
Right. I'm having a hard time not seeing everything as a type of abstraction.
Well, I think, at some point when you learn to draw and you understand how drawing works, and you understand that it is about understanding how we see the world abstractly.
Right. You got to flatten it out.
You can't help but not see it anymore. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're trying to draw an object, you can't help but see the abstraction in the objects.
Right. If you're still looking at it as a plug, it's not going to happen for you.
Right. You'll draw a cartoon-looking plug.
Right. You'll draw like a sun with 5 black lines coming out of it.
A hairy sun.
Right. These are symbols for these are drawings that act as symbols, but they're not really related to our experience of seeing.
Let's see. Margaret says that ellipse trick is cool. So how you lined up the 2 ellipses to make sure that they were in the right place.
Still use that parallel, or those parallel, I used those lines that I previously had drawn in there and just drew more lines parallel to them. So again, it's an example sometimes of when we draw more than is there, just to kind of help us find what is actually a shape or a form in our drawing.
Now that paper looks like it's got some tooth associated with it.
It does, but it is white, just standard white sulfite drawing paper.
And one of the reasons why the tooth is more pronounced with that pencil is because it is a darker and softer pencil.
That's
so
true. I've jumped straight to the ebony
less
pencil.
of that material is going to make it into the little recesses there with light to moderate pressure. So,
and I thought about using a
texture.
stump today. I thought about bringing a stump, but I decided against it. Because this is a very smooth object. I mean, you can see, of course, this object has been used. I use this cord all the time, so it's a little beat up, but generally it is smooth.
It has had power running through
That's right. That's what you figured it out. My drawing is about power.
It's about power.
It's about power.
It's the conduit of power. There it is. That's your title. Conduit of power.
That's my title, personally.
For this piece.
Okay.
You know, if you want to take it there.
Now, I may switch back to the 2B pencil. I'm sorry, the HB pencil. Some. Sure.
Pandora Law asks, how do you trace? And I actually mentioned several different ways to trace, but there are endless numbers of ways to trace. As long as you have some kind of light coming from behind the artwork or from behind whatever you're tracing, then you can trace that way. So
I would tape this drawing or a drawing to a window on a bright sunny day on the side of the house that the sun is shining on, and then tape another piece of paper over top of it. And when you press them together nice and flat on the window, you can see through it.
You can use a light board. You can use a graphite transfer. Graphite transfer is where you take a soft graphite, like a 6B pencil or even softer, and cover the entire back side of the image or drawing that you want to transfer, and then flip it back over and put it on top of the drawing paper, and then just with a sharp tool or a pen or a pencil, you trace over the lines, and it transfers the soft graphite on the back to the drawing surface. Brent Does Art says, Ashley, do you prefer the ebony pencil, or in this case, you're using a General's layout pencil, which is
it's
a little
General's
different
layout
from the ebony pencil,
Yeah.
To the carbon pencil when shading. Do you ever use a carbon pencil?
No, I really don't. So I would say I prefer the ebony pencil due to lack of experience, Brent.
Now, I've used a carbon pencil on a few occasions, and it's somewhere in between a graphite pencil and a charcoal pencil.
Right,
So
it's a little rougher. I mean, I've had them in my hand, I've made marks on paper, but I haven't actually executed a piece of art all the way with the carbon pencil.
Now, somebody is saying, what happened to Ashley's mic? So I'm not sure if the mic got tilted away from your...
I apologize. And also, hopefully you haven't seen the top of my head. I have a tendency to get closer
you're out of camera
to my drawing. So I've moved the microphone.
I'll turn your mic up
I think
a
it's
little bit.
more in front of me now. I'm sorry. So apologize for that. And thanks for the feedback.
Okay, let's see. Buddy is saying, once a teacher told me never to use an eraser. What do you think about that? Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of great teachers out there, and there's a lot of teachers out there that probably mean well and just give you bad advice. And then there's probably some teachers out there that just aren't good. And I'm going to say that teacher probably meant well, but probably gave you bad advice. An eraser is more than just a tool for fixing mistakes. It's also a tool for making marks. But I think what your teacher was trying to get you to do is not get hung up on the mistakes when you're making marks in the early part of the process, because if you do get caught up in that, you'll never finish a drawing. You'll just keep erasing. You'll make a mark and say that's not right and keep erasing. And it's okay if some of your sketchy lines show in the finished image, but never use an eraser is probably not the best advice. Peter says, great example here of how don't always need to use a stump. How, you don't always need to use a stump. In fact, there's a video that I made on YouTube on blending stumps, and the whole premise of the video is, do you really need blending stumps? And I share a variety of situations where you would probably use a blending stump, and also examples of situations where you wouldn't use a blending stump. So.
I pass them out to my students all the time, but they have to listen to a speech first. About the blending stump.
Use this wisely.
Right. About how it's like the typewriter. It makes all of our marks look the same.
Yes.
So if you use it, if you overuse it, you'll lose your unique mark making. The mark making quality that makes your artwork unique. So I like to use it to soften, but not to just destroy every mark in the artwork.
Flatten everything out to a nice neutral gray.
And I know it's hard not to when you really get going with that thing, and it's just making things so glass smooth. But I like to use it in places. Like it would be more appropriate to use it to just soften the edge of maybe this cord portion in the back. But, I'm not going to do that because I don't have, well, actually I have access to one.
You have access to lots of blending stumps here.
But I don't want to use them.
I can grab one for you if you do change your mind.
Okay.
Kinsley asked, what grades of pencils are you working with? And he started with an HB pencil. That's just a regular number 2 pencil here in the United States. And now he switched over to a pencil called a General's Layout pencil, which is about equivalent to a 4B pencil. Marina asked, Matt, is the forum available for non-members? Yes, the forum is absolutely free. You don't have to be a member to be a part of the forum, and it's over on the website. Simon says, can you give me advice of how to use simple shapes for the environment? I know how to draw perspective. Give me a simple advice on how to draw simple shapes for the environment. I'm guessing you're talking about like cubes and pyramids and cylinders and those kind of things. I'm trying to think of the best advice to give you. There is a little kit that I bought, and I wish I could remember where I bought it from. I think I bought it from Amazon, but it's a little company, and they may not be a little company, but they make little forms. That's what I'm getting at. And these little forms are great to set up, and you can photograph them and work from the photographs, or you can set them up in front of you and draw from them as well. And if we have time at the end, I will show you that here if we have a little bit of time. And this time I'll need to remember to show you, because last week
that's right,
there was something we needed to
show. It was the
sanding
board.
The sanding board and
pad.
And
it was my job to remind Matt to show the sanding pad.
I'm not going to ask you to remind me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm actually going to grab them in just a second while I still have it on my mind. Any tips on how best to recreate the depth of field effect? Blending stumps, and you can create the illusion of space or depth within a scene through a number of different techniques. One technique is just to increase the contrast for objects that are closer, so you make the blacks a little bit blacker and the lights a little bit lighter for objects that are closer. So you can see that plug that's lower on the picture plane, that's going to have the greatest contrast on it if you want to create the illusion of space. And then those objects that are further away, you can make the values a little bit lighter. That will help to create the illusion of space as well. And then, of course, you could blur things out, as somebody mentioned there with the blending stumps. That's also going to help to create the illusion of space as well. And then overlapping also does that as well. So the more of those things that you include in your drawing or painting, the more of the illusion of depth you're going to create. Okay, somebody says no sound, but I would think other people would be saying that too. I would check and just make sure that sound's working wherever you are. And if you have no sound,
maybe
don't
it's
hear me
me
saying this.
Maybe it's me. I haven't been. I stopped talking for just a minute. Do you see that I have volume when I am speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay,
You're
just
good.
making sure.
Let's see. Joan McDonald asked, have you ever sketched with waxed colored pencil? And I'm assuming you're asking here on getting sketchy.
I sketch in colored pencils all the time.
Yeah.
But
yes.
Just in my sketchbook.
The answer to that is yes. There are a ton of colored pencil tutorials on this channel and even more at the website. And Keith asked, what is the website? The website is thevirtualinstructor.com. So if you click on either one of the links below this video, it will take you to the website. And you can also just search for drawing lessons or painting lessons on Google, and you'll find it that way as well.
Matt will be drawing a flower very shortly over there.
Yes, I will. I have it out in front of me, actually. Let's see. Question on composition. I tend to work on drawings with more contrast. This one works even with less contrast. Would like to hear your thoughts on that.
I like contrast too. It is true that there's not a lot of dark in here, but there is, there is some. I feel like the range of value is here, just in unequal portions.
Well, I think there is contrast in this image because
there's definitely in this plug that we're going to next. This is where the contrast is in this one. This one's lower contrast.
A lot of times people assume that contrast only refers to value too, and contrast refers to anything that's different.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a variety of different textures here. There's different sizes, different shapes. So all of that is a form of contrast. But I do think the darks are relatively dark and the lights are relatively light, and
I did actually, believe it or not, I did pump it up a little bit, digitally in Photoshop, just spread the contrast out just a smidge.
Okay, Zubar asked, hi, are you going to do more pen and ink? It would be great for me and future viewers. Yeah, there's a ton of pen and ink lessons too. There's a course over at the website where it's called Subjects with Pen and Ink, and it's 31 drawing tutorials on pen and ink. So you can basically do a new drawing every day for an entire month. That's obviously not here on YouTube. That's for members, but there are a ton of pen and ink lessons here on YouTube too, as part of this channel. The reason why you're probably not going to see a whole lot of pen and ink here on Getting Sketchy, I've done a ballpoint pen drawing here.
And I plan to do a ballpoint pen drawing this season.
But pen and ink is a slower medium, and since we have 45 minutes to complete a drawing, it would be a little bit difficult to complete a pen and ink drawing in 45 minutes, although the ballpoint pen drawings, we were able, or the one I did, I was able to get it done, I think, maybe in 50 minutes.
Yeah, I think we might have gone just a tad over, as is our habit.
Bit, yeah.
So you guys are probably getting used to that. The timer is a strong suggestion. I feel pretty good about it. I got 5 minutes, and I'm in a good spot right now, speaking of the timer.
Now, I want to point this comment out. Javi Job says, the bottom female plug is floating. It is not connected to the rest of the cord. It looks like the artist missed the small section of the cord that recedes back and under the rest of the cord.
Right here.
Yeah, and I can see that, but I think if you were seeing this drawing, you might miss that instead of seeing the photo reference. Everybody who's watching this has the benefit of looking at the photo reference and making comparisons to the photo reference while Ashley's drawing it. Now, this is a huge advantage for you guys because you don't have to look down at your reference and then move your eyes back to the paper and back and forth like you do when you're creating a drawing. But in the end, when you look at the drawing, that's probably something that you wouldn't have noticed because that cord probably could have bent backwards and it could have been covered up completely by the plug in the foreground. So it's good that you're seeing those things because you are actually
looking
learning
hard,
by going back and forth between the drawing and the photo reference. You are picking up on the differences and you are actually learning to see as an artist by just watching this video, which is great. But keep in mind that inconsistencies in your drawing are expected, and that's okay if things are different from the reference. In fact, in theory, your drawings and painting should be a little bit different than the reference.
If we can find a way to improve on the reference, then that's our job as artists.
Absolutely.
So I changed my plan of attack a little bit in the shading because we were getting lower on time, and I went ahead and covered this second plug entirely in a light value, and then I'm just going in and finding the darker areas now, and then I've got a few little spots I'll clean out with an eraser near the end.
Brent Does Art says, I've fallen in love with soluble graphite. I think he means water-soluble graphite. I'd like to see it appear on Getting Sketchy. That might be a possibility.
I do have a water-soluble graphite pencil. Yeah, I could break that thing out.
I got a bunch of them.
I got mine from my student.
A variety of different grades. I have a lot of those. And Javi Job says, whew, now it's grounded. They're very thankful you added that little cord back there.
Me too. Thank you.
Grab these little forms here.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And this, of course, will remind me to say something about them here.
All right. This is the part where I start looking at the screen a little bit to see how my values are translating for you guys out there, because it's always a little bit different. It looks like I need to go darker than the way I see it with my own eyes in this area.
Yeah, that's always a tricky thing. How it's amazing how much things can look different on a screen.
A little bit, a little bit of that lost in translation business.
People are now seeing things that you need to do.
Oh, no. Well, as long as you
them.
guys do it in your drawing, that's what counts.
They're saying that you need to add the cast shadows behind the prongs on the top plug.
Yes, you're right. How much time do I have?
You have plenty of time.
Well,
Take your time.
I'll do you one better. I'm going to add those cast shadows, and I'm going to shade in the background in this next minute. So let's do that.
Well, in the meantime, Javi Java says, you guys are the best. Keep up the great work. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, those cast shadows are what makes it a little bit. Now, I did have a teacher that said, just ignore those things. Just ignore cast shadows. But he was ignoring all the fun.
You had a crazy string of teachers.
Yeah, I did.
Did you study under Dr. Seuss, too? I mean, just ignore the cast shadows. They're not really there.
He said, if you don't draw them, no one will notice.
Well, that's probably a valid argument, because if we just saw the drawing, that might be something that you don't necessarily notice.
It's true. Just want to do a little bit of business up here. We're going to go over just a tad.
Okay, Simon asks, just a personal question, what are you two doing other than drawing art?
You mean at the moment? We're just cutting up, hanging out with you guys.
That's pretty much what we're doing.
No, this is pretty much.
I guess in our lives, well, we both play golf.
Yep.
I play the drums.
I play the guitar.
Yeah.
Poorly, but I play it.
I also play a sport called pickleball.
Oh,
I don't know if
gosh.
I'd call it a sport, but my wife and I won a mixed doubles tournament in our neighborhood, and me and another partner won the men's tournament in the neighborhood.
You've opened up a can of worms.
We have
talking
two
about
pickleball trophies. We haven't opened a can of worms. I only mention it here and there.
I've never heard of pickleball except in this neighborhood.
It's like a mix between tennis and ping pong, and I'm telling you, it's blowing up. It's exploding.
It could be in the Olympics. Everything else is.
It could be one day, actually.
I'm surprised at some of the sports that make it into the Olympics. And I'm not going to talk about the ones that surprise me, because some of you probably play them out there. I don't want to lose any viewers. I'll tell you one thing, though. I love curling. I love it. And I am,
Now,
I'm from a hot climate. Nobody curls around here. And I think it is the coolest thing to watch.
Now, I came across some sport or game the other day called bowls. Have you heard of that before?
Bowls? No,
Bowls.
I've never heard
like
of that.
These people, I've seen one clip of it. They throw like these balls that are kind of oddly shaped, and they put spin on them and stuff. It's like curling. There's a little ball. It's kind of like a mix between curling and bocce ball.
Okay, well, I like both of those. So I might have to check out bowls.
Those sports really make you sweat.
Yeah, they're skill based. They're skill based. That's what I like.
That's why I hesitate to call them a sport. They're more like games.
And I'm
like
okay with that.
darts.
There's the argument. People say, well, like for example, golf. People say it's not a sport. It's just a game.
Right, yeah.
Okay, whatever. You call it what you will. I love it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. A golf by any other name still smells as sweet, right?
That's true. That's true.
So I don't care if it's a sport or a game. If there's skill involved, like pool.
What would
or
you call
golf,
yard darts? Is that a
lawn
sport
darts
or a game?
Yes.
Or an act of murder? What do you think about yard darts?
I played with yard darts. I thought
I did too when I was a
right. They
kid.
were a lot of fun throwing them up in the air.
That's what we did.
Running.
We would throw them up in the air and run away. And we were not supervised.
I know
clearly.
people were hurt playing lawn darts or yard darts. That's why they don't exist anymore. But you kind of know where they're going. I mean, you just have to pay attention.
You throw them up, they're going to come down.
Right. Just make sure you don't walk out in the yard when somebody else is playing lawn darts. Okay.
There's probably tons of people out there who are like, "What are yard darts?"
They were these like 16-inch long darts that you would throw in your yard into a circle or a ring, but kids would just throw them straight up and run before they came back down. And they would sink down into the ground, like 5 or 6 inches. It was pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Pandora Law is asking, "How do you actually play pickleball? I've never heard of it." Look it up on YouTube and. You can see
there's a trampoline involved,
players.
Or is it
no trampoline?
Okay,
involved.
what is the thing does it bounce off the ground?
It's like
the
a
pickleball?
miniature tennis court, basically.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm getting it confused with that game people play at the beach with this trampoline thing. Maybe you've seen it. And they're like bouncing a ball off a tiny one of those Suzanne Summers style exercise trampolines from the 80s,
Oh, at the beach.
Yeah, you've seen those?
That's called spike ball.
Spike ball.
And we actually have a spike ball kit that we haven't even opened.
Okay. That's what I was imagining pickleball was.
No. It's not even close. I'll have to show you afterwards.
Now, I did get it. I mean, it took. I don't know how
major transition.
Yeah, I don't know how long it took me in the background, but I was just intent on getting these little spots here and kind of here, but here also, to be the whitest or lightest thing in the picture, because the background is not white. And that was important to me to point out. I know you can't really tell from you can. If you look real hard at this highlight in the reference photograph and then look at the background right next to it, you'll see that the highlight is whiter. So it's just important to note that there's a lot of light values that are not white, and sometimes they're represented as white. We lose a little bit of our range and our cohesiveness, the harmony created through value.
Yeah, I think it looks great.
All right.
Fantastic.
Super. Well, this is about as far as we can get it in today's broadcast. Yeah. But next week, I'll be picking up right where I left off. And no, I'm just kidding. We're done with this one.
Now I got to figure out what I'm going to do next week. I kind of like the idea. We should.
Matt's going to do an outlet in a wall.
Yeah, I was thinking we're just going to do industrial items. Yeah. Next week we're going to do a stack of nails.
Right. An office chair, which I love drawing stuff like that. I could draw industrially. I could draw like mass-produced objects.
Yes, I've been doing mostly organic objects. I feel like I need to go a different direction.
You do a lot of animal. You do a lot of animals.
I do a lot of animals.
And so I'm just trying to kind of respond to that, and do something that's pretty different from some of those things, and also different from what I did last season.
Okay, real quick, let's see. Is it Lewis? I think. I am sorry, this is a little off topic, but do you guys think gesture drawing is the best method for learning anatomy? Love the stream, by the way. I think the best way of learning anatomy is to take an anatomy class. But gesture drawing is a great way to learn how to draw anything.
Yes.
It speeds up your drawing and loosens you up. It's also a great warm-up exercise. But I kind of believe that you don't necessarily need to know the anatomy in order to draw it, because your body changes or your subject changes, even just slightly. It changes everything. But that's my personal approach there. I don't feel like I need to know all the different body parts.
Yeah, and that is a great conversation in art, is how much do you need to understand what's inside of the body or under the skin, the muscles and the joints, to represent those parts the way they look as light falls across them. And they're still just forms. You can still think about body parts as sort of little pieces of cones and spheres kind of stuck together. So those objects that Matt's going to talk about and show are great just for learning to capture form. And then, hopefully over time, you'll start to see those forms in the the more organic body. Having said that, I think just figure drawing in general, gesture drawing and beyond, taking your figure drawing pretty far is great for learning. I would call it artist anatomy, just sort of how some muscles kind of disappear underneath another. It's good to understand where the origin of the muscle comes from, and kind of how that how they lay across one another. But knowing what the sternocleidomastoid isn't so important.
But you know what it is.
I do. I happen to. I was showing off there. It's the only big muscle name I can remember.
All right. Well, I was going to show you the little shapes and things with my overhead camera, but I realized since I'm not doing the drawing for Getting Sketchy, I didn't turn on my overhead camera. So I'm going to show you the shapes here on this camera.
Okay.
But you can turn your lights off now because they're no longer needed. And I probably lost a little bit of glow. But here is an example of some of these little shapes or forms here. And it's a wonderful little thing to have because you can just set these guys up and take photographs of them like Ashley did with the plugs, and get a lot of interesting angles and shadows and things, and play around with different compositions. And like I said, I think I got these from Amazon. And if I can find the link from where I got them, I will put that in the description underneath this video sometime in the future. Obviously, it's not there now, but there's probably 7 or 8 little shapes here. And I think I think this little kit is really designed to teach children the different forms, like smaller kids, like I have running around my house. But I saw them and thought that they would be excellent for making little photo references and doing little form studies. And ironically, I've had them for quite a while and I haven't used them yet. I haven't used them to take photos, but I will be using them soon because I've started work on a new course, and one of the modules in the course, or one of the series of lessons, is going to deal with drawing these shapes. So,
Matt, how much time do we have?
We've got, let's see, it's 7:32, so we've got a few minutes.
Can I show one more thing in the drawing to address the question?
Yeah,
okay.
Let's switch back out over here to your camera there.
So I believe it was Pat that asked how would I draw those little dimples inside of the circle? You may be trying to get those in your drawing. And I'm not sure that you can actually tell because we're kind of zoomed out right now, but I went ahead and laid in something that's similar to like a checkerboard pattern. Okay, if you look real close at those dimples, if you're able to, they're actually little bumps, but they're laid out in a checkerboard pattern. And with the light coming from the left, once we get that pattern in there, a simpler version, a flat version of the pattern, all we really have to do is shade in the right corner of each of these tiny little shapes, something that I really didn't want to, spend too much time doing, but would definitely want to do that if I were going to take this drawing further. And that'll give you an indication of form. So start out with a checkerboard pattern. It's a little bit distorted, a little squished. They're more like sideways diamond shapes. And then you can just start shading in the furthest right corner of each of those shapes, and they'll turn into forms.
Yeah, it's kind of like drawing scales or something.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. Sometimes a pattern like this requires 2 or 3 steps to get to. You can't capture it all in the first pass.
All right, well, awesome.
All right, great question.
Yeah, you did a great job, too. All right, guys. Let's see. Let's check on Ashley again there. You make it.
I survived. Yeah. I could use a drink, just water.
It's always. People don't understand how stressful that is,
Yeah,
it really is stressful.
My hands are so wet right now. I'm surprised that I didn't lose the pencil. So I can't wait to dry them off a little bit and relax and watch Matt draw for the next hour or so.
But you know what? It's a little stressful for us, but we really enjoy doing it.
I look forward to it every week.
Yeah, it really is a lot of fun to do this, and I hope you guys do as well, or enjoy it as well. And if you did, of course, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. A lot of people were asking about certain mediums and even some subjects that we've already covered in depth on the YouTube channel and also on the website. If you haven't been to the website, thevirtualinstructor.com, I would encourage you to do so. I kind of assume that everybody kind of knows about it, but maybe you don't. So check that out when you get a chance. There's a ton of free lessons over there. There are even more lessons as part of the membership program. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already, or just peruse the YouTube channel, because there's a ton of videos here too that you can check out that cover some of the subjects that I saw there in the chat box. I didn't mention everything, but there were people asking questions about certain mediums and subjects, which we've covered in great depth, a lot more in depth than getting sketchy here. So, Ashley, do you have anything else to add, or?
I don't have anything to add. Just thank you guys for remembering to be here this week and share this special time with us. And I look forward to seeing you guys same time, same channel next week.
And I do the same. That didn't make sense. I feel the same way.
You do too.
Yes, I do too. We'll see you guys right here next week. And for those of you who are heading over to the live lessons, I'll see you in just a minute. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and sign out for this evening. Good night, everybody.